Oh, it says an error.
Says we're
Wait a
live.
moment. Wait a moment and try again. Okay.
I see us live.
Hey, everybody. It is Kim Hawk, and I have the most amazing Elijah Lewis. We are here for Wind Down Wednesday.
Yes, we're gonna raise our beverage and relax on and talk
Yeah.
about what's going on in the market.
Elijah, it's been a crazy week, right? I mean, we've been so super busy.
Heck yeah, it's been real blessing to be this busy, but it's just kind of a thing where it was a lot of sewing with our marketing and our outreach and our channel here, and now we are reaping.
Yes, yes, thank goodness. And we are so grateful for our clients that we have. And I know before we go any further, I know our YouTube production group would want us to do our little jingle at the beginning. So here we go.
It makes me sway too when I do.
Yes, it makes us sway. It makes us sway. So today is April the 26th. And so Elijah brought to my attention an article that I want to pull up. And I think, what we try to do every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Wind Down Wednesday on the Near Disney YouTube channel is try to help educate, what is it about how to buy a house and how to sell a home in 2023. So Elijah found this article I'm going to pull up so we can talk to everybody about it. There we go. I thought it was very interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
what are we seeing here, Elijah?
Yeah, so this article is saying that Redfin pulled some data, and they found that one third, about uh, 20, almost one third of Gen Zers and the younger millennials are homeowners. Actually, I know that there's a lot of memes out there and a lot of talk about how that is a generation that is struggling to climb the economic ladder. But I was relieved to see some data showing that we're actually thriving a little bit better than we get credit for, and that makes me happy because I am in that age bracket myself, just a little older, actually. So it said that 25-year-olds, about 30%, owned homes in 2022. And it's trying to give a little bit of the data for how that came to be. It's like, so in around 2020, the conventional loans were 3.3%, and in 2021 they were even getting down as low as 3.1%. And there were some things going on that were giving people a break, like the uh, stop on the student loans, and that is actually something that people are still enjoying. That has been kind of kicked down for a little bit longer, and even some of those stimulus checks that were coming in. And so that was around the era that I bought as well as a man in my, mid to late 20s. So it was just something that I was pleased. There's some cool data here saying that the median monthly mortgage rate was, if you locked it in then, $1,013 in 2021 for 25-year-olds, which was just like somewhere around 15% of the median income. So kind of a manageable lifestyle, and once you're locked in as a homeowner, you could be enjoying that equity. And maybe you were getting your starter home, a few years pass, and then maybe all of a sudden you're kind of in a position to use that equity and appreciation and think about even reselling already.
Yes, yes. You know what? I love that. We have talked a lot about other people's money, OPM, OPM.
Yes,
And yes,
love it.
and this instead of other people's nails, other people's money. So what Elijah is reporting, and I'm very proud of him. I mean, to be under 30 and own a home, is a big deal. And I also think it's very, very wise, you guys, because rentals out in Central Florida, if you're watching from Central Florida, and by the way, please let us know where you're watching from because we would love to know that. Um, Rentals are very, very expensive. A one car garage apartment where we're at
Mhm.
will run 1850 a month. So, even with the interest rate going up a little bit from then, you're going to be paying less to own something than you are to rent. Would you agree, Elijah?
Yeah, I mean, just from that, if you locked in a mortgage rate around that time that I was talking about in that like period of a few years, just hovering around just over $1,000 or even $1,200, $1,300, depending on the loan, that is significantly less than $1,800 for a garage apartment, which is something that was totally new to me when I moved to Florida from the Midwest. We didn't have many garage apartments, but
Yeah.
I in fact lived in one when I came down here. So,
Yeah.
hey, that's a cool situation, but it it is nicer to own, I would say.
Yes. Now, we've been experiencing, like I said, I mean, Elijah and I have been just running nonstop this past week, and we're
Yeah.
just so blessed. And we once again thank you for our clients. We want to give some guidance out there, especially since we know a third of the 25-year-olds are buying right now, because you won't learn this stuff in school. You're not going to learn this stuff in college. You're going to have an Elijah or Kim by your side. And by the way, when you have a buyer's agent, you don't pay us anything. That
Right.
commission comes from the sellers. So why not use the expertise of us? And especially if you're in that age range in particular, talking to Elijah and knowing the things like at his age versus my age in regard to, oh, I wasn't expecting this, or I was expecting this, or hey, this is the reality of when you want to remodel something that you buy, or hey, this is the reality of, hey, I'd rather go ahead and buy something and then work on it slowly so that I can still afford it, not be house poor, but I'm gaining equity in my property, which is making me richer, right?
Yeah, I would agree. Even if you didn't do the updates, you probably still saw some equity.
Yes, yes. So, a couple of things, you guys, if nothing else, and please, like I said, Elijah's telephone number is underneath of his image. Call if you ever want to pick our brain a bit. I would also say, as a seller, we represent a lot of sellers, and this is good reminder to sellers as well. We want to talk about sellers disclosures. Now, we're in the state of Florida, but it's become even more important than ever, in my opinion, Elijah. Don't you think, in the last couple of weeks, for us to remind people the importance of filling these things out the right way?
Yes.
So let me just pull one up so that we can talk people through what we're seeing here. And we're excited to report, I think tonight is our first night that we're actually on a podcast too.
Yeah, if you're just listening to us, hope we're easy on the ears for you.
Yeah, yeah. So, for those on a podcast who can't see what we're looking at right now, there is a document that in Florida, it's a Florida Realtors document, but it's called a seller's property disclosure. And it's very important, especially as a buyer. I'm visualizing this wonderful, cute 25-year-old who hasn't bought anything quite yet. And they should be advised, you want to look at a seller's disclosure before you decide on the final price that you want to offer to the seller. Would you agree, Elijah?
Yeah, it's good to anticipate any objections that might come up. These are and have your realtor guide you for what the boxes that you're checking is going to mean to a potential buyer, how that's going to impact them to see that, and how to price accordingly or
Exactly.
plan
Exactly.
for that.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing, so like when it brings it into different categories, but one would be structures, systems, appliances. So the first question right out the bat says, are the structures including roofs, ceilings, walls, doors, windows, foundation, pool, hot tub, and spa structurally sound and free of leaks?
Mm.
Very important, seller. You need to say if there's been a leak in the house, because don't you know your next door neighbor remembers when you had a leak that was in the house? Yeah. And so you want to be able to give the buyer the right to do a mold inspection, because you may have a young person that's allergic to a lot of stuff. And if you don't know that there's potential problems with that, you may not be advised to get a mold inspection. A regular inspection does not include a mold inspection, right? Right, Elijah?
That's correct. That's usually an add-on feature, and it can be nice, depending on the area, depending on the building style, or even it's like people come here from out of state, they hear about that Florida humidity, and they just kind of wonder about how that affects the walls and the potential for mold.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm so happy to report because I know we have one done this week for somebody. And, especially a lot of people that are in the medical industry too, doctors and nurses and stuff, they're going to be very sensitive about, we want to make sure there's absolutely no mold in the house because they truly believe, or at least our clients, our friends believe that once that water gets in there, they got to make sure it's completely eradicated. And it can be, but you got to know about it first, right?
Mhm.
But what I found was back in my days, in the early days, because for those listening, I've been in real estate for over 25 years and I'm a top 1% nationwide producer. My mom was a broker when I was younger. So you could say I've been in the business for many, many decades. But back in my day, Elijah, it would take 3 days to do a mold inspection. You'd have to have these things in the house. You'd have to make sure nobody could walk in the home for 3 days,
Whew.
and then you'd gather them. It would be sent to a lab, right? And I
Right.
think what happened with yours this week, you did one, and how long did it take?
Well, I guess it's shocking how technology changes. The guy came in, was in there for just about an hour with his equipment, and was able to get us something back, reported on it the next day. So this was something that had a very quick turnaround, which is great, so that you don't have to worry about anything going amiss over like a 3-day period of volatility. Just
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
simple and clean.
Simple and clean. And then another grouping would be termites. There's usually going to be an inspection that the buyer pays for, typically out of pocket, credit card, that type of thing. Normally, you can ask your realtor. Typically, we'll give like 3 different recommendations, right? And there's also an additional cost if you want to do something called a WDO. Now, a WDO is a wood destroying organism report. That doesn't necessarily just mean termites. That could be, it's,
Fungi,
yeah,
wood rot, just water damage to the exterior, or structural. So yeah, it
yes.
could mean a number of things.
Yes. And so we've had, and a perfectly great house can be available and under contract. But, there's going to potentially be some things, especially in Florida, that will show up where there's a little bit of wood rot here, that type of thing. And typically, you are going to ask that seller to give you a clean WDO report. And it's
Mm.
very important to work with your realtor because chances are good. Obviously, we have handymen that we know this one's better than that one in order to fix this, that, and the other. But it's not a scary thing when you work with us because we're going to help you through that process. Now, one thing I will share with you, those that are listening to, termites are not a nice thing. Now, you can get around, you can have a house tented and you can get it, to the point where you're okay with it. But I will share with you that if even termites are found a week after you've moved in the house and the seller has not disclosed that they've seen termites, that's the one thing in Florida that is not forgiven. And
Ooh,
that means that that seller is going to have to give you back your money.
wow.
You're going to move out. You're probably going to tell them how much it costs for all the pain and suffering that you went through. But that is one thing that cannot be forgiven. So, very important, number one, to get the inspection done. But number two, for the seller to mention if there has been any, because you can also possibly note that maybe some work can be done on a house that's older. Oh gosh, something happened 20 years ago, it's taken care of. Well, when the new inspector comes in, they're going to see that. And so you want to be transparent, right? Elijah, we just want all the sellers to be transparent so that
Yeah,
we can work through it.
yeah, especially when this stuff can come back to bite you, even with a little termite mandible. Uh,
Yeah.
we, yeah, even when we often, as a practice, submit as is contracts when we
Yes.
do or we deal with them. But when it comes to wood rot, And when it comes to termites, we do find that is one thing where we oftentimes can negotiate and come back and say, hey, I know we said as is, but can we get these wood rot items taken care of? And that is something that we often see sellers at least be amenable for that, even with an as is contract, because they know how important that is and that they can still be liable later for those termite things like Kim talked about. No guarantees. Sometimes as is as is. Can't make promises, but we even just see that they do take that very seriously, that it can even sometimes be something that a seller might still consider addressing even then.
Yeah, very good point. So the next section talks about water intrusion. It's asking, has past or present water intrusion affected the property? Now, if you don't disclose that and the inspector comes in and sees that there's an active leak, then the buyer can potentially say, oh, I know we have an as is contract, but you did not disclose that there's a problem here.
Right.
And they may very well come and say, I've got to get a quote to see what it's going to cost to fix, or I'm going to ask Mr. or Mrs. Seller to give me a credit because I need to deal with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So plumbing. So things that we run into for plumbing are we don't really have septic tanks. It's like maybe 1 in 100 that I've dealt with septic tank sales. But if you had a septic tank, because that's typically somebody that has a lot of land, but that's an additional fee for somebody to come out and check the septic tank, and that's super critical because you don't want that septic to be leaking out into your acreage, and that's a horrible thing.
No.
Don't want We don't want that with it. We don't want any of that stuff. But yeah, but I would say the big key on plumbing for us is we want to make sure, and even ask this question too. So on number 4H, are any polybutylene pipes on the property? We're always looking to make sure that says no. And why is that, Elijah?
Well, because those pipes are no longer up to code. They are they were deemed to be dangerous and not safe for living conditions. If they were grandfathered in and you've been living with them, that's great that you didn't have a problem yet, or that it didn't cause any hazard to you. But it's not an issue that the next person buying is going to want to inherit, kind of like lead-based paint. Like you just it's just something that it may require repiping the entire house, and probably few people are going to want to take on that yourself. So it'll maybe be you're doing if you really want to make it sale ready.
Yeah. And for the sellers out there, if you have polybutylene, chances are good you're not going to probably be able to sell your house.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you're going to have a cash buyer who doesn't care about it, because a lender will not allow it, because
Insurance purposes.
there's too many examples of the pipes just eventually burst, and they're just not going to pay those insurance claims. Yeah. Yeah. So we're hoping this is helpful. If anybody's out there and has any questions, feel free to go ahead and throw those questions at us. We are on the Near Disney YouTube channel, and we also are on several Facebook pages right now. So just let us know, and we were more than happy to answer your questions. But we're going to try to be as thorough as possible on this because I think it's going to help somebody.
Oh yeah. And there are some lines here that are kind of blank, like toward the bottom of sections, where you can write in some explanations for things or write in some extra pertinent information, just that might anticipate questions, or like if there was ever a claim, you just get a chance to tell them what that claim was and that yes, it was addressed this year, so that And if there's some area where a leak was fixed but maybe not patched the best, in so many cases during showings, a buyer's going to walk in, look up at the ceiling, see this very curiously shaped square or something in the ceiling, and then they're going to want to know the history of that. If you can kind of preempt that question and preempt that concern by just writing it in the line here that's provided, that's great, because everyone is very skeptical, and
Yeah.
rightfully so.
Yes, rightfully so. That's right. Now it's got a section on roofs. Now, Elijah and I have to talk about roofs like every day, pretty much. Florida, it's a hot topic. So, Elijah, what's the big deal now with Florida and roofs? And it's really been the last year in particular, I think we've had to deal with it.
Well, yeah, Florida insurance companies here, some of them have, just they don't want to even bother with Florida. The ones that do are very, very strict about roofs now when it comes to like some of these hurricanes in recent years, and they even will think that 10 years is already the time when they want to see a roof replaced. They don't like to see them be older than that, even if you got some kind of like assurance like, oh, this is 20-year shingles, or this is, you know, just 11 years old or something, or we had a roof guy look at it and evaluate it and he says it's just fine and it's got another 8 years on it at least. These guys are brutal. They
Brutal.
don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
They just work off of numbers, kind of like the dudes in the Moneyball movie. They're just looking at the statistics, and they're not looking at your individual case by case what some evaluator said. And so they will just really be hardline about that. And so 10 years is kind of what we keep out for you. It's one of the first things we look for when we're looking for the listing information to even schedule that showing before you fall in love with the house. Just age of that roof, when was it replaced, and do the sellers realize that it's going to be an insurance nightmare if they aren't willing to do something about it, whether replace it themselves or offer a credit to get it done ASAP.
Yes, exactly. So I'm so glad you said that. So even in this circumstance with roofs, cash buyers and people that are getting finance will have issues if your roof is over 10 years old. Now, if it's a barrel tile roof that has a warranty for 20 years or 30 or 50 years, that's a different story. But these shingle roofs around here, and you
Mhm.
also want to be very careful about making sure you put the age of the roof, the right age, because what will happen is when they pull up the insurance and stuff, somebody's going to pull up and see when the permits were pulled.
Right.
And so if you've sold somebody by saying that maybe it's a 2-year age roof and it's 3 years, that's not such a big deal. But if it's a 7-year aged roof and you put 2 years down, you may have to go back to the negotiation table because the person's going to say, I thought I had 8 years left and I only got 3 more years left. And I'm not ready for, and let's talk about, a smaller, nice, compact home, it's still going to probably cost you about $16,000. And we had a home recently that it was $62,000, Elijah, I think, for a
Wow.
replacement, right?
Yeah, it was a large property.
And that's a lot of times it's money out of pocket. There are some roofers out there that will work with you and let you do a monthly payment towards it. But that's super, super important. That's something that your realtor should be telling you. And once again, we hope we will be your realtor someday.
You don't
Um,
want to get surprised with that information if you're working with a realtor who never brought it up, and suddenly you're at the negotiating table with a contract and you've already had the house on the market for months, and then suddenly you learn about this incredible factor that goes into how saleable your home is and how it's going to affect the offers you get. We want to give you all the information right up front and be as realistic with you as possible while, trying to get the highest and best for you.
Yes, high integrity. And also, as a seller, if you are in a situation where, gosh, I would like to replace my roof, but I don't have the money, that's the reason why I'm selling my house. Please talk to us. We do have companies that if we call and we say that we're listing your house and we do a video, they'll give an estimate, they'll take care of it, and then they don't get paid until the day of closing. And
Mhm.
we would have a year in order to do that. So don't be afraid of that kind of stuff. Elijah and I work with those people all the time. Okay.
Yes.
So it did quickly mention pools. You want to tell people if there's a problem with your pool, sinkholes. It's funny in Florida, there's a sinkhole every once in a while, but we don't have many sinkholes, Elijah. I haven't run into a sinkhole in my entire career, but I bet it's a question that I get asked like every 3 days.
Yeah, yeah, it's like quicksand, huh? When you watch every time when I was little, the cartoons led me to believe that quicksand would be a way bigger problem in daily life than it actually turned out to be. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, this last one variant, well, it's not last, it's second to last, but it's really the homeowners associations. So in Florida, for those of you that haven't experienced this, especially if you're driving around right now, you're up in Virginia or you're in Wisconsin or wherever you're listening from, we are pretty much have homeowners associations, and there's a lot of positives with that. You know, if you don't want to maintain a pool all by yourself, all of a sudden now you have all these recreation communities that are around, and you have access because everybody in that community is paying towards having a pool built, having it maintained, cleaned,
yeah,
playground. Maybe there's a guard that you're paying for, a lot of subdivisions around, you know. And I would say Celebration, Florida, where Elijah and my office is located, our HOA is very, very low.
right.
So, what do we get for our HOA here, Elijah?
You get a nice handful of community pools. They're taking care of the streets and the sidewalks. They're putting on events at the downtown. They are providing tennis courts and yeah, just some parks for kids. And there's walking trails and bike and paths that get maintained. So it is a place that continues to aesthetically live up to being the town built by Disney.
Yes,
And for not even too much, like you were saying, it's a reasonable fee.
very reasonable. It's about $113 a month. And for you want to ask your realtors, you know, that's a good question because, you know, sometimes I have people that say, I love to play golf.
Mm,
Well, Celebration would be great because it's pay as you play.
yes,
Whereas there are other areas that are going to require $100,000 just to get in and then to be able to play golf. So it depends on what level that you want to be involved in. But like with Celebration, Robert Trent Jones Sr. and Jr. designed this course. So it's an incredibly great course that's available to you. Now they're saying things like environmental issues. We don't deal a lot with that. That's typically properties that are built before 1978. But if they are, we're going to be right by your side and make sure that there's a lot more inspections that are being looked at, making sure there's no lead-based paint in the home, for example.
yeah,
Yeah. And the last one I think is super critical too, and I'll take this off the screen, but it's talking about claims, litigation, any type of things that could still be coming up before you
right,
close. And so, for example, we find where we're at because we do have an HOA, the good, what we just talked about, the good, and also the good, but has a little bit of slanted bad, is right before you close and they know that you're getting ready to sell your house. There is a little inspector that comes walking by your house and they're going to try to write every little thing on a list that they can to make sure that you are in compliance with the HOA.
right.
And you might find that it's a little, you know, what's a good word for it, Elijah? Picky, a little,
Meticulous.
yeah, yeah. And it's just the stuff you as a seller don't want to have to deal with. You're like, really? That mailbox has been that way for 3 years, and now you want to talk to me about it? Well, it's because it's their chance now to try to get the house back up to the level of what they want. Now, this is where on your seller's disclosure that you need to say that you're in compliance or you're not in compliance. If you were to say up front, hey, I know that the mailbox needs to be changed, blah, 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 that's good because when we're negotiating a price, that buyer is aware of that, that they're probably going to have to paint something. But if you haven't disclosed because you didn't know, 100% of the time, you won't know.
Right.
If you think about it, it's 100% of the time because it's typically the HOA triggered once they see that there's a contract,
Mm,
right?
right.
So always just kind of anticipate there's going to be those type of things. Oh, did you plant a rose bush when you weren't allowed? Oh, did you change the doorknob when it wasn't supposed to be changed? That kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's important to work with an Elijah, you know, that can help at the 11th hour say, don't worry about it. I got all these people on my team, charge about $55 an hour. They're pretty fast, and they'll go in and they'll fix this stuff so it doesn't slow down your closing. Yeah.
Yeah, you want a realtor with connections with a Rolodex, as you know, if you need suddenly a lot of needs arrive for different kinds of contractors, different kinds of handy workers. We just are going to be, from like you said, decades of experience. Got a lot of people that we have come to learn, to love and trust to take care of you,
Yeah.
and also just like we mentioned about just being high integrity. Uh, you just don't want to pass those HOA non-compliances on to the next buyer to suddenly get hit with letters that are not just welcoming,
Yeah.
but telling them that they've got expenses or else. Because sometimes in certain areas, it's like for every day that this isn't addressed, we're adding a fee to it, and that can add up. Especially if you weren't aware of the days adding up, you didn't check your mailbox in a while, especially if it's not a primary residence.
Yeah, and speaking of, our teams, I just want to give a shout out because I'm seeing a big hello from the Celebration Sanitation Company,
Oh,
Ken Lee and his team. You know what? It's wonderful to have, these guys on speed dial when all of a sudden it's like there's a ton of trash that's outside because somebody just moved out, right?
ah,
And and so you call them and you're like, hey, we've got some extra trash here, can we pay a couple of extra bucks in order to get this cleared out, because we want the new buyers to come into the house and it's fresh and clean. And don't you know, Celebration Sanitation always comes to save us.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah, they save us, they save us. So I think that pretty much covers why the importance of the seller's disclosure. What do you think, Elijah? Anything else that we should add?
I think though there was a lot of line items. We didn't go line by line for hundreds of the things, but we did go to the places where our eyes, as experienced professionals, immediately check for like the main areas of concern. Those are the things that we check first and foremost before we review the entire thing. Because those are the biggies that we want you to be aware of as a seller and a buyer.
Yes. Yes, very good. Now, what I thought we would do is we're kind of rounding up the show.
Yeah.
Is, when I saw the number 225,000,
Mm.
I was thinking there's not a lot for sale in that price point. However, I'm trying to remember me being a 25-year-old and, a one bedroom or a two bedroom condo would be fabulous, would be fabulous. And so we did pull this example up, right, Elijah? It's in Kissimmee. It's a two bedroom, two bath, and it's 223,900. So under that 225 mark, it's 1,035 square feet.
Yeah.
And it's in a gated community, and the HOA is low. It was $270.83 a month. So, I'm thinking, somebody could have a roommate too if they wanted, but even if they kept the two bedroom by themselves, that mortgage payment is going to be less than a rental payment for a one bedroom apartment.
Right. Yep. And that's a huge advantage to have the second bedroom, whether you need it for a roommate, or if you finally get to a point where you don't your income has increased or something, you don't need the roommate. Hey, then you've got whole extra room to utilize
To
and
play your drums in.
play your drums in, or or have a little home office or something.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things that the article was established, is that it was during the pandemic that a lot of these young people that were required to live at home
Yes.
were saying, I need to go have my own place. I need to have my own space, and
Right.
they're making good money.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they wanted to have some space where they could get their work kind of separated and then have their living space, and so it makes sense. And we have great, great mortgage people. Disney Credit Union, the vice president there is on speed dial with us. And you do not have to be a Disney cast member anymore in order to get a loan from them.
Yeah, just a resident of Florida or California, the two places where Disney has its strongest presence. So that's cool that it's no longer just a cast member privilege. And sometimes, when you work with them, they can even give you a little bit of a better rate than what is kind of the standard going around, just depending on which arm loan that you can make work. So we'll get in touch with us so we can put you in touch with them about getting pre-qualified.
Yes. And actually, Elijah's got a cool tip. He's got an insider's tip. So, that interest rate that you might be concerned about, let's say if it's 6% today,
Right.
he's been going in lately and talking to sellers. And what are you doing, Elijah?
Yeah, there is a way to help if you to get an offer soon. If you offer some kind of buy down the rate uh, credit off of the sales price, if you're allowed to offer up to 3% uh, of the sales price as a credit toward buyers' closing costs and prepaids. And this can actually make a difference for them in getting their interest rate lowered a little bit, maybe a percentage or so, and be able to offer stronger. That could be something that helps make the deal, gets it closed faster. And when it comes to that 3% number, I mean, no one likes to come down on price very much, but we often see that 97% of sales price can sometimes be where things, can fall as a trend, even in a good market.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, for example, if today's interest rate was 6% and we got the seller to contribute 3% towards the buyer's closing costs and prepaids, that would drop that interest rate down to 4.25, 4.25. So somebody would be in the low fours.
Right.
So many times it's good to say, would I rather have the money off of the sales price, or would I rather have that buy down on that interest? And if you buy that interest down and you're able to keep that for 7 years, the 7-1 arm, we've been told by Disney Credit Union that the average person only keeps their home for 5.9, 5 years, 9 months.
Mm.
So if you keep it longer than that, you just look to see if the interest rate is going higher, or you need to refinance, or hopefully you've had made some payments towards buying that down. Sometimes you can go and make a mortgage payment like every 2 weeks and not pay more, but pay every 2 weeks, because then you're not going to have that daily interest that's accruing on you, and you're going to possibly save 7 years off the life of your mortgage with that.
Mm.
Just all kinds of fun stuff that our team knows, because we're known as the fairy godmother of real estate, and Elijah's known as the prince of real estate, and we would love to work with you guys.
That's right. We are these things because we specialize in the 25-mile radius of Cinderella's castle, and I like to say that we will find the glass slipper fit for you. So
That's the way to end up the story. All right. Well, we hope to see everybody next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Cinderella is on vacation this week, so you'll be seeing her next week. But I was glad I got to jump in, and look for us on Fridays at 1:30. We do a show on Fridays that talks about those areas within a 25-mile radius around Cinderella's castle with our YouTube crew. And then on Mondays, if you are a Celebration resident, or if you're interested in Celebration, we do a weekly update on what's going on in the town that Disney built.
yeah, absolutely. Just stay subscribed just to get all of this great information just for you on the market and the area.
Yes. And thanks to everybody that's listening on the podcast. Hopefully, send us notes if any things that'll help us along. But we would love to make sure we get this information out that way.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Things that are going around the 25-mile radius of Cinderella's castle, because this is truly a magical place to live.